Yativaram Gurumashiyama. Adiyan. So, first of all, welcome to all the kids to our question and answer session with Sri TCA Ramanujam, TCA Venkatesan Swami from Michigan. And this is on behalf of Vanamamalai Balarpalli, run by Sri Ramanuja PEAC. We are having this question and answer session. And TCA Ramanuja, again and again it is coming. TCA Venkatesan Swami. So he's a great scholar, Sri Vaishnava scholar. He is hailing from Anantalvan, Tirumalai Anantalvan Parampara. So probably many of you might be knowing about Tirumalai Anantalvan, who was a disciple of Ramanuja, Swami Ramanuja himself. And it is really we are all blessed to have TCA Swami and with us, and then who is going to be, he is very down to earth person, and kids, you can ask any question to him. There is nothing like I can ask this or that, so you can ask any question to him, and then Swami will be very happy to explain to you. And Swami, now I think Swami can start.
Okay.
Adiyan,
Madhura Kavidasan, as somewhat correctly introduced, I am TCA Venkatesan. I run the website acharya.org, as some of you might know. I do come from the lineage of Tirumalai Anantalvan. I would not call myself a great scholar, so that's she's being very kind. When we did this session once before, and we'll continue the same format, by mostly having question and answers, right? I don't want to be giving a talk or any such thing. One question about Tamil pesna paravalya, English pesna paravalya is, what is the preference from the audience here?
I think பசங்க கேக்குறா அப்படின்னா ஒரு மாதிரி சிம்பிள் தமிழ் and with கொஞ்சம் English explanation அது ஓகேவா இருக்கும்னு நினைக்கிறேன்.
Okay. Yeah. So before we start, I just wanted to introduce the say a few introductory words. Nammudiya Sampradayam grew on the backs of questions and answers. Right? So this is not something we are setting up as a new thing or a unique thing that has not been done before. There is always a fear that people have expressed to me at times. நம்ம வந்து ஆச்சாரியனை கேள்வி கேட்கலாமா? Not that I'm saying I'm an Acharya here, but in general, right? Should we ask questions to our Acharya? Right? And I think there's got to be a distinction, right? Between asking a question and questioning someone, right? So it's two different things. So asking a question is always welcome, right? Because you are trying to learn and you're giving the opportunity to the person answering the question, to also think about what the Sampradayam says. Questioning is something different, right? That is coming within, I'm trying to, either show that person poor light or, make them look, unable to answer a question. I think that's what people say. Don't question Acharya. That's what they mean, right? Don't go there with an attitude of trying to prove something. Go there with an open mind. You're trying to learn, right? If that leads to more questions, I think that's even more better, right? So on that regard, right, most of you might be knowing already that this is the 1000th year of Swami Embar's Tirunakshatram. So Embar is one of the acharyas in our Guru Parampara. So he is a direct disciple of Swami Ramanuja, and he's also the acharya for Parashara Bhattar, who was the son of Koratarva. So in the Sampradayik works, we see that a lot of questions were asked by acharyas to their direct acharyas or to other people. There are, regular people asking questions to the acharyas. There are acharyas asking questions to other people. So it's a complete mix, right? It's not that you have to go to only one type of person to ask a question. It's not that, only one kind of person can ask a question. And interestingly, it is not just that only one kind of question that needs to be asked. So see, what we may take as very fundamental, such as why is Tayar needed, right? We say, Tayar is needed for mediation. Right? But there is, recorded history of that question being asked by an acharya to another acharya, saying, if Perumal can grant everything, why do we need, Taya's, mediation in between? So something we may take as very fundamental and very, accepted was actually asked as a question by not any one person. This was asked by a Voranvari Acharya Parampara இருக்கக்கூடிய ஒரு ஆச்சாரியரை. He asked his acharya that question. And these have been recorded in various works like Guru Parampara, in the Vyakyanams, in Vartamalai, and various other works. And there's also what they say Karna Parampara, which is basically that information that's come through hearing only, right? It's not been recorded in any work. So all these kinds of questions are being asked, right? So I just want to take up Embar because it's Embar's 1000th year, right? And point out like 3 examples of 3 different approaches to to a question that we can see from Embar's life himself. One is that he's giving a very interesting, not a direct answer, but expressing something in the middle of an event, right? So in Srirangam, as some of you know, Arayars, they perform a kind of a dance kind of thing where they recite Arva's words and they show that in mudras. So in Perumal Tirumuri, there is a verse where the Gopikas are a little upset with Krishna, right? Because he's showing up, he's not showing up, he's going with some other girls, etc., right? So one of the girls says, one day I'll get my hands on you, and on that day, Varudiyel en sinam thirvan nane. She says, I will take out my anger on you at that time. So at that moment, the Arayar is, performing the dance, and he expresses that by saying, showing that the girl will hit Krishna, she'll kick him and so on. That's how she will take out her anger. Now, Embar is sitting in the audience, and he shows to that Arayar that's not how she would do it, right? But he's not talking to the Arayar. He's just, he is demonstrating something from the audience, and the Arayar catches it immediately and he changes his expression. So what Embar did there was, he said, look, if the Gopika actually puts her hand on Krishna or kicks him, he actually enjoy it, right? For him, that is the sparsham, the connection, physical connection with the devotee. That's what he wants. So, that's not punishing Krishna. So what Embar does there is he turns his face away. And he says that's what the Gopika would do, right? She won't actually physically touch him. She will turn her face away from him. And that is punishment for Krishna. And that we say is, in the traditional Sampradayam also, we say that's what we do, right? We turn our face away from Perumal while he's trying to shower his mercy on us, right? So that's called Vimukha. And then Abhimukya is what? When we turn our face towards him and saying we are welcoming his mercy, right? So in this case, it was not a question and answer, direct question and answer, but it was something that was going on where Embar gives an answer indirectly to the Arayar to make him change his, dance form, right? So that's one thing we see. Another place, in Tiruvaimozhi, there's this a direct question and answer between Embar and his disciples, right? So his disciples are coming to Embar and saying, there is one set of verses called Veettirundu, and in which Perumal is sitting in Paramapadam and Alvar is enjoying it, is full of joy. Then the next 10 is Tirpara Yamini, where Alvar is extremely sad. He's not with Perumal anymore, and he's crying and he's fainted, and Alvar's mother is trying to revive him and so on. So the question that the disciples came and asked Embar was, how come that Alvar was so full of joy and right immediately after that he is fainted, right? He's full of sorrow and he's fainted. And then the answer that Embar gave was Asangati Reva Sangati. He said Asangati, which is basically no connection. Right? Sangati is connection, Asangati is no connection. No connection is the connection. So that is interpreted in 2 different ways. But the traditional way is to say that Alvar is not writing poems like a normal poet. He's not thinking, right? He's not saying, I'm going to write this. Oh, I'm full of joy now. I'm happy. I'm expressing that. The next thing should be, continuation of that. He's not thinking like that. He's writing poems as they come to him, right? So it's an experience. So the very fact that there is no connection is the connection, because the Alvar is not sitting and thinking and writing, right? So the answer given by Embar is very, interesting, right? He's giving a very, unique answer where he's saying there is no answer here, right? You cannot look for an answer at this point. Then there is one more Thiruvaimozhi verse where Alvar says, Vanmame solli emmai vilayaduthiyo. So the Gopikas again are saying, you are saying something in our ears and you're playing with us. And the disciple comes to Embar and says, what is this Vanmam? What is Alvar saying when he says, Vanmame solli emmai vilayaduthiyo? And at that point, Embar says, Alvar has got Mayavara Madinalam. He has been given knowledge, flawless knowledge by Perumal himself. Even he did not express anything there. He just said Vanmam and covered it up, right? It's a secret. It's a secret between Krishna and the Gopika. Even Alvar is not aware of it. How do you expect me to answer that question? So do you expect me to give an answer where even Alvar himself didn't say anything about what that was? So the reason I'm showing this one to you guys is to say, right, there's not always an answer, right? So we cannot go around saying everything has to be answered. And even a great Acharya like Embar was willing to say there cannot be an answer given here, right? Because we do not know what was in Alvar's mind or what was in Perumal's mind at that point. So does that mean we should not ask questions? No, we ask these questions to find those things, right? And sometimes you may have an answer. Sometimes the person giving, answers may not have an answer immediately. They may have to think about it. We see that in Embar's life himself, right? One time, disciples came to him and said, "Saai pola paadavallar tavum vanukkargale." What is the meaning of that line, right? And Embar said, "Let me think about it for a minute." And then he took Ramanuja's Padaka, put it on his head, thought about it for a few minutes, and then came back with the answer. So a person may not be able to give an answer immediately. They may not give you an answer at all, or they may give an answer that you may not like. None of which should stop you from asking questions. None of which should stop somebody from trying to answer questions. We have to have an open mind, right? This is not someone knows everything and someone doesn't know anything and we're asking questions. We are dialoguing here, right? We are talking with each other. That's the approach we all should be taking, not in this session alone, but in any interactions we have with within the Sampradayam, I would say even outside, right? When you even have conversations in your life with other things, if you keep an open mind and ask questions, you will learn a lot and you will grow, right? And hopefully that's the approach we'll take today. So with that, I will stop talking and I will open it up for any questions you guys have.
Jayashree, so she'll be introducing the kids and then she'll call the kids. Jayashree. Okay. Jayashree?
அடியன் கேக்குறதா?
கேக்குறது.
அடியன் சுவாமி, ரொம்ப சந்தோஷம். நீங்க இன்னைக்கு இட்ஸ் அ நைஸ் ஸ்டார்ட். ஐ திங்க் இது ஒரு நல்ல ஸ்டார்டிங் இருக்கும்னு நினைக்கிறேன் கிட்ஸ் ஸ்டார்ட் கொஷின்ஸ்க்கு. ஃபர்ஸ்ட் அப்ரமேயன் ரெடியா இருக்கு கேட்கறதுக்கு. அப்ரமேயன், நீ ஸ்டார்ட் பண்றியா?
சரி அடியன். ஹலோ அடியன். என் தங்கச்சிக்கு இன்னொரு கேள்வி என்னன்னா, ஆனா இப்போ அவ இல்ல. என் தங்கச்சியோட கேள்வி என்னன்னா, பூர்ண அவதாரம் அது என்ன? அண்ட் பரசுராமனும் பலராமனும் எப்படி அவரவா பூர்ண அவதாரமா நான் கேள்வி. அவளோட பூர்ண அவதாரம் என்ன? இங்கிலீஷ்ல கேளு.
ஓகே, குட் கொஸ்டின். எனக்கு தெரிஞ்ச வரைக்கும் நான் சொல்றேன். பெருமாளுடைய அவதாரங்கள் இஸ் நாட் நம்ம தசாவதாரம்னு சொல்றோம். Those are the recorded in the Puranas kind of set of avatars. Right? But as Alvar says, Perumal is not limited to just those 10 avatars. Right? Vedam also says the same thing. Ajaya Mano Bahuda Vijayate. Right? So Ajaya is one who is not born. Bahuda Vijayate is born many, many times. Right? So Alvar also says the same thing, right? You're born in many, many different ways. And not only many different ways, and the ones we know of, Alvar also says, Endiranda Yoni Mai Parandai, right? Endiranda is countless. And in any type of form, right, he's born, right? So sometimes he's born as, a human, or sometimes he's born as a mix of a human and animal. There are avatars where he's born as a tree, where he's born as a lake, and so on. So Perumal takes all kinds of avatars. Now, all these avatars are not called as Purna avatars. So there are different types of avatars that we say. One வந்து Purna அவதாரங்கிறது வந்து where he is complete. Right? That avataram, he has come in his complete form. Right? What does that mean? Right? So we say Rama and Krishna as Purna avatars, where he has come down, he is born in this earth, he lives a certain number of years, and during all those moments, he has not lost touch with the fact that his divinity was come down. Right? So even though Rama hides, saying that he's only the son of Dasharatha, right? He says, I only know myself as Dasharatha's son. Even in the end of the Ramayana war, he's asked that question. Not asked the question, but all the devas and everyone comes and praises him, saying, you are Narayana himself. And he says, I don't know that. He says, I'm Dasharatha Atmaja. I'm only the son of Dasharatha. That's how I know myself. But our acharyas have shown that throughout Ramayana, you can see very many places where he accidentally, or maybe playing a little bit of trickery, I guess, he reveals who he is, right? We won't get into all those details, right? But Krishna Avataram, we know that for sure, right? He himself says that, Mamekam Sharanam Bhajan, opana sollugar Perumal, right? In Kalla vandu nee Sharanam Pannanam. Abdina Arjunakku, when he says it openly, he says that, right? So these are called Purna avatars because he's in full touch with who he is, and that entire avatara period, it is Perumal himself. There are other avatars like what we call the momentary avatars, right? He appears for a task. It's not a full birth in this world and living certain number of years, long period, doing a lot of actions. None of that stuff, right? It's just a momentary thing. Like, for example, Narasimha, right? He was born in that very moment when the pillar was broken, took the action that was needed to be taken, and then the avatar is completed. So those are the momentary avatars. And then there are some avatars where we call as Avesh avatars, where it's a person who is normal person living their lives, but for a brief period, Perumal, what we call Avesham, where Perumal permeates him, that body, to take care of certain things, and then he leaves that body, and then that body continues its normal life's journey. So that's why we say Parashurama is Avesh Avataram, because he actually interacts with Rama Avataram. Rama Avataram is Purna Avataram. Parashurama actually interacts with Rama Avataram and comes and challenges him, right? So we cannot see that as Perumal challenging himself, right? So in that moment of when Parashurama shows up and meets with Rama and challenges him and so on, that Avesh Avataram is already completed, right? His actions have already taken place much prior to that, when he eliminated the 22 cycles of the Kshatriya lineage, right? So that period was completed, that action is completed, and the Avesham is completed. Now it is just Parashurama, who's a normal person living, and after interacting with Rama and losing all his power, he retires to the Himalayas and goes to do penance there, and then leaves the world from there. So in the Purna Avataram, where he is fully in touch, and the whole existence shows that he's an avataram. Momentary avatars happen, then there is also Avesh avatars. Now these are the ones are part of the Dashavatar. Like I said, there are many other avatars that he takes, and you and I may not even be aware of how he does that, what he does. Maybe there's some other categories, we don't know, right? Our limited knowledge only can show certain categories that we understand. There may be other types of avatars, and that he takes that even we don't even understand.
Thank you, Adian. I just have two more questions. One
Sure.
of them is, what happened after the Kurukshetra? So after the Pandavas won, what happened in the Mahabharata and how did it end?
I'm not very familiar with all these stories, because Mahabharatam has got a lot of stories, right? And then, interestingly, where Mahabharatam leaves, there are other Puranas and other works by other people that take up the story and continue on. from a high level, what I am aware of, right? The war ends, and the Pandavas rule, and then after a while, that they also decide to go to the Himalayas and leave this world from there, right? Um, and then there is a story of Parikshit, who takes up and so on, and the lineage continues from that period on. There are, like I said, other works. Uddhava Gita ஒண்ணு இருக்கு. Mahabharata itself is very huge, vast. In fact, I'll be honest, right? I've not read the whole thing. I've read only pieces and portions here and there. If you're interested, I would suggest go read, at least a synopsis of, the 18 parvas of Mahabharata, see where it ends, and then see, what other works are out there. From our perspective, right? And the reason, I'm not saying, this is as a justification, but this is how it is, right? We try to read what we want to read. We try to, learn what we want to learn, which is useful to, within as a growth in the sampradaya, right? If there are stories and other events that happen within the work that is good as a story, that's good for us to know how Bharat developed and so on. Yeah, we can learn that, right? But they're not going to really give you the information on understanding of the sampradaya better. Annangaracha Swami actually makes an observation. Some people may not like it, or they may protest it, but he says if you look at the Alva's works about Krishna, most of their Divya Prabandham, where they talk about Krishna, is about Krishna's Bala Leela side. When Krishna was a child, baby, and growing up in Gokulam and so on. The period where he actually, has become an adult and now he's ruling Dwaraka and, participating in the Mahabharata war and all, those are actually very, very small and very limited. Right? The references that Alvars make to his actions in that period is actually very small. Right? In fact, if you look at it, there's not even very many open references to even Bhagavad Gita in Alvar's works. There's a reference here and there. Even the Charama Shlokam is mentioned only in kind of hidden way, right? It's not openly stated. But there's a lot of, verses about the killing of Putana, or, all the asuras being killed and so on when Krishna was a baby or a little child, right? So for the reason being that Alvars were, immersed in that anubhavam, right, of his actions when he was a baby, more than his actions as an adult, right? If you want to look deeply, maybe you can say that that was gives us more information about the sampradaya. Perhaps, maybe not. Maybe we can discuss that, right? But to answer your question in a kind of a long-winded way, I do not know all the details of what happened, other than a little bit about Parikshit and so on. But I would encourage you to go look, if you want to read and read the works, right?
Okay, Adiyan, I just have one last question. So in Vaikunthapuram, Perumal is known as Vaikuntanatham. In Bhulogam, Perumal is known in many forms. So what form would he be known in Patala Lokam for Mahabali to worship?
What is the Alva's works, or even Upanishad say, right? That he's got countless names, right? And he's got countless forms. The classic Purusha Suktam, how it starts is Sahasra Sirsha Purushaha Sahasraksha Sahasrapat, right? So there Sahasram doesn't stand for 1,000, it stands for countless. So he's got countless heads, he's got countless eyes, he's got countless feet, countless hands, and so on, right? Our echoes the same thing, right? Tolgalayirattai, Turemalad Kandalayirattai, Talgalayirattai, and then he also says Pergalayirattai. We have the Vishnu Sahasranamam, which is 1,000 names. And each of the 1,000 names, again, like I said, 1,000 is just a representative. It means countless names. And each of those countless names represents some qualities of Perumal, right? So every name is associated with the quality of Perumal. And so he's got countless qualities, right? Asankheya Kalyana Gunagana, we say that, right? He's got countless auspicious qualities. And with each of those auspicious qualities, we can say there is an auspicious form that he can be seen, So based on your viewpoint, based on your glasses, as you say, right? If whatever tinted glasses you wear, you see a certain quality, and therefore you see a certain form, right? So what specific form that he has in all the different lokas, we do not know, right? Like I said, our ability is limited to, our body in this world, right? And what we can see. What are the other lokas, how they see Perumal, we don't know, but they will be able to see him in a different form. And as you mentioned, right, in the Paramapadam, he has a certain type of form, and we cannot see that with our mortal eyes. And he himself says, right, I give you a divine eyes. And with those divine eyes, you will be able to see that form in Paramapadam. But, without that, you cannot see me, right? So same way in Patala Lokam or any other lokam, wherever, all the, 7 lokas above or below, whatever form that, he is in, you will have, whatever type of ability there to be able to see him in that form.
Thank you, Adiyan, for that response. Dhanushmi.
Again, that's
சூப்பர். அப்புறமே ரொம்ப ரொம்ப தேங்க்ஸ். இன்னைக்கு இவாலாம் கொஸ்டின் கேட்க கேட்க எங்களுக்கு நிறைய விஷயங்கள் தெரிஞ்சு போகணும்னு நினைக்கிறேன் இவாளோட சேர்ந்து. இப்ப எங்க ஆத்துல 2 குட்டீஸ் இருக்கா, அவளும் ரொம்ப கேட்கணும்னு ஆசைப்படுறா. One is like 6 years and 8 years. Srihari, do you want like? Yeah. சரி.
என்னோட question வந்து ஏன் is Thiruman red and white because Perumal and Tayar's favorite colors?
So, very good question. I never thought about why Thiruman is white in color. Now, the Sri Churnam, we say it's, red in color, and, some people also wear, yellow, which really stands for gold, right? Both of which are okay, because, it's representative of Tayar's color, right? We say Hiranya Varanam Harinim Suvarna Rajatasrajam, right? So, Hiranya Varnam, right? Hiranya is gold. So she is golden in color, right? So in representing that, we can wear, red gold or yellow gold, whatever you want. And that is appropriate for the Sri Churnam. Now, Thiruman is something that, we choose, we wear that to show Perumal's divine feet, right? Now, what color is Perumal? Good question, right? Both the Vedas and Alvas Divya Prabodham say he is in different colors in different times, different periods. Different yugas, he has different colors. So in Krita Yugam, they say he was white in color. In between, he was green in color. And in another Yugam, he was, dark blue in color. And now in Kali Yugam, we say he is, completely dark in, the black as you can think of. So, so what is Perumal's color? We don't know, right? Just like I said in the previous answer to the previous question, he's got thousands of names, thousands of qualities, thousands of forms. So too, he has thousands of colors, right? He's not limited to this color or that color. So why do we say he had specific colors in specific yugas? Is because it actually matches to the quality of the people who pray to him in that yugam, right? So in Krita Yugam, we say everyone was Satvika, which we represent by white. So they saw him in white color, right? In Kali Yugam, we know how the situation is today. So, we see him as dark in color and so on, right? So in different, the different colors that he has represents different qualities. From our perspective, we see him in those colors, right? The Thiruman was selected. I don't know, honestly, good question. I'll have to ask somebody about this myself. It's taken from a specific, type of mud that we select, right? It's not just any mud that we select. Certain very specific mud is selected, and the Thiruman is created out of that mud. And it naturally comes out as white, I believe, right? So some people add a little bit more white to it. So it's not an exact white color. It's like a shade of white. And that's, when we use that, obviously, it looks white on our foreheads. Could it have been some other color? It depends, right? If the mud that was selected for this, purpose was a different color, we might have worn it differently. If you think of it as Perumal's divine feet and say, well, Perumal is really dark in color, why we should be really wearing a dark Thiruman, right? Again, like I said, the Thiruman is selected from specific areas in the land where they collected, and then they, create the final form that we use. That comes out as a shade of white.
Thank you very much. Dhanyasmi. Ariyandaka.
Bhavyashri.
Why do we have to wear? Why does girls have to wear puttu every single day?
It's not girls have to wear pottu, no one else has to. Number in our sampradayam, or in our culture, we say the forehead has to be used to show who we are. Right? அந்த காலத்துல நான் சின்ன பையனாச்சு அவர் சொல்லுவாங்க ஏன்டா பாழ் நெத்தியோட இருக்கு அப்படின்னு சொல்லுவாங்க. பாழ் நெத்தி is basically wasted forehead, right? Why are you wasting your forehead without showing anything on it? So we use that forehead, to put something on it to show who we are, right? The Mahabharata stories, right? When Krishna actually had gone out, and he would tell his guards, right? If anybody comes to see me, or maybe even if he's inside, right, and he doesn't want to meet people, he'll say, don't allow anybody in, but if certain type of people come, don't stop them, right? And who are those type of people? He said, those are my true devotees. Now, how would the gods know who the true devotees are, right? If somebody just shows up, you won't know, right? But if you look at their forehead and they're wearing a tilak that says that, I am telling that I am Perumal's devotee, I am Perumal's dasa, right? And then the gods know, oh, okay, this person should be allowed in because, he's a true devotee or she's a true devotee. So we always wear that because we don't know who we run into, right? An interesting story I'll tell you, right? One of the scholars of Sampradayam, he said he was driving a car one time. I might have told this story before, but I'll repeat it. He was driving the car and a policeman stopped him, right? And normally, in those days, this has happened like, 20, 30, maybe 40 years ago even, right? The policemen, when they stop, they will admonish you, they may write you a ticket, and sometimes they may even take some money and let you go, right? And so they looked at this guy and looked at him, and he had a big turban on his forehead, and he said, Sami Ningalama. And then he said, go, right? I'm not going to, give you a ticket, just go away, right? Please don't speed like this, drive normally and leave. But the point is, right, he was able to, a person like that was able to identify that, hey, this is not a regular guy. He's, obviously belongs to the Sri Vaishnava Sampradayam. He's wearing a turban on his head. He's got dhoti, he's not wearing a shirt. And, even though he's driving a car, and, he looked at him and said, you're a devotee of Perumal. How could you be doing this, right? And let him go at that point. So it serves as an identification marker, not just for ourselves, right? And not for Perumal, but for everybody who we run into. So that's why we wear that every day, right? We don't want to go around without having this on your head because you don't know who you may run into, right? You may run into a normal person, you may run into a person with some power, we may run into some person who, some people use it to insult us, right? And that's okay. They want to use this to insult us, that's what they want to do, right? They're adding to their own karmas. So then the question you asked, right? Why do girls have? No, it's not just girls, right? Girls wear a certain way. Boys also have to wear a certain way, right? Both have to wear. Unfortunately, probably, due to history, I would say, this is my guess, that men, started going to work, right? And they used to go work for the British, in those days, and maybe even prior to that, they're working for other types of kings and so on. And today we go to, work for private industries or whatever, right? And this is not something that's, sometimes it's okay, sometimes it's not okay. It's frowned upon by some people, and so on. So the men probably started removing it, whereas, the women who were not, doing that, tended to keep it on, right? So it's become kind of a bifurcation like that, where, girls have to wear it, they should not wear it, but boys, it's okay, but it's not, right? Everybody should wear it, right?
Thank you. Then use me.
Next. Next, Rishi, he is ready to ask. Rishi?
I see somebody's raised their hands. I don't know if they had a follow-up question or they just want to ask a question.
Yeah, kids, யாராவது ரெடியா இருந்தீங்கன்னா நீங்க ஹேண்ட் ரைஸ் கூட பண்ணலாம் so that I can call if you want to go next. But in the meantime, Rishikesh?
So I see somebody called Hamsini has raised her hand.
Okay, Hamsini, go ahead.
Yeah, I have another question, Swami. Shrimati Ramanujaya Namaha.
Chalva.
நம்ம யூஎஸ்ல இருக்கோம் அண்ட் எப்படி சம்பிரதாயம் ஃபாலோ பண்றது நிறைய பேர் லைக் எவ்ரி ஒன்ஸ் டிஃப்ரெண்ட் அரவுண்ட் அஸ் ஸோ எப்படி சம்பிரதாயம் ஃபாலோ
Very good question. One, you have to be true to yourself, right? You should not live someone else's life, right? You should not. Obviously, we live in a society. We will be influenced by others. We cannot live in isolation. So there's going to be some amount of influence by others. But within that, right, you have to stay true to yourself, right? So if you have, a certain belief system, you want to live a certain way, right? Live that. Be strong in that. Don't be afraid. Will people mock you for it? Yeah, people mock for everything, right? You can try to fit in and they'll still mock you. You can do the best you can to merge into the common, and you may still not succeed in that, right? So I would say, right, start by being true to yourself. And how do you be true to yourself is you have to use your knowledge, like events like this, right? Ask your questions, learn from that. Talk to your parents, talk to your other people, people who have information, collect information. And once you have the information, right, you can be strong in that, right? Because information is strength, right? Lack of information is where you will fall apart. So even in an ordinary thing, right, you see people, friendly debates, right? You have argument with your friends and you're saying, hey, I believe this, and they say, no, you're wrong, and they say, when do you fall apart is when you don't have information to back up what you're saying. So if you have information that backs up what you're saying, what you're thinking, so how does the information come about? It's like any other subject, right? If you go and say, I come from a physics background, right? And I'll say, Newton's first law says this, right? And I say force equals mass times acceleration. And then somebody says, what does that mean? And if I can't back it up, right, and I'm going to look like, well, I don't know, I just read that, I'm not sure, right? And then they'll say you're wrong. That's a silly statement because I see this, I see that. Things doesn't always match to what you're saying, and then your case falls apart because you don't know how to defend it, right? But if you read it, you study it, right? Then you say, no, we have done experiments. I have actually seen this in action. I know what I'm talking about, right? And then you're able to defend your position, right? And that's true for anything, right? சம்பிரதாயம் எடுத்துனா கூட நம்ம ஒருத்தர் வந்து ஒரு கேள்வி கேட்கிறா, நீ ஏன்ப்பா நெத்திக்கிட்டு இருக்க, what is the point of this அப்படின்னு சொன்னா, you have to be able to say, I'm putting this in my forehead because of these are the reasons, right? Why do you not take it out? All these are the reasons that I don't take it out. I'll tell you an interesting story. I had only Sri Chinnaman one time when I was traveling, and I actually went to a 7-Eleven, I think. I stopped there and went to get something. It was coffee or something. I don't know what it was. But anyway, I go in there and the guy looks at me and goes, excuse me, I think you're bleeding on your forehead. And he said that, and I didn't say anything. I just looked at him, and then he immediately stopped and he said, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize, this is your religion, right? I really apologize for this, right? So I didn't have to say anything, right? He himself realized that, he had something, that he had made a false, incorrect assumption in this case. But if he had not, right, I would explain to him. I had a very staunch Christian guy come to my house one time to do some work in the basement of my house, right? And he looked at me and he said, what's this? Every time I come to, I see this, right? And I said, look, this is our religion. And I didn't just say it's a religious thing. I just said the white represents, surrender to God. The red represents that we are doing, in service to him, and so on, right? He just nodded his head. He was not very, particularly, convinced of anything. But I was able to say, if he had wanted to ask further questions, I would say, hey, in your Christianity, you have the same thing, right? You also say the same thing, right? So it's not that, this represents something that you are not aware of. In this case, he walked away, he didn't want to be, have any further discussion, but you have to have the strength, right? I know he's coming. I know he's come multiple times to my house, but I'm not going to say, I'm going to wash my face just when he shows up, right? So be strong, learn what you need to learn, be aware. The more information you have, the stronger you're going to be, both internally and externally.
Thank you, Swami Srimati Ramanujan.
Next, Ashish.
Adi and Swami, Namaskaram. இது அம்மாவோட கொஸ்டின். ஏன்னா அம்மா நிறைய பிவிஏ சாமி இருக்கா. ஸோ லைக் யாரு Chetlur Krishnamacharya and Vaimu Gopala Krishnamacharya?
They're all scholars of the Sampradayam. Kanna. They have all published books, right? Anangaraj Swami has published a lot of books. Che Krishnamacharya also has published, Divya Prabandham and all the Vyakyanams. Remember, I told you, right? The Vyakyanams were mostly gathered in what we call Volaichavari, right? Which is basically writing in palm leaves, which tend to deteriorate after time, just as paper does too, right? So these were the kind of the pioneers of publishing that on paper, right? In maybe more than 100 years ago. Right? They actually started publishing them in book format and using the more common letters, because in those days they used to use lipi for the script and some other ways that was not a text that common people would read. So these are the people who actually started publishing them in the more well-known Tamil letters, right? Anangaraj Swami also rewrote the Vyakyanam for all the Divya Prabandham in what we call Eliya Tamil, which is in simple Tamil, because the Vyakyanams were in Mani Pravalam. So he did amount of work there. Vaimu Gopalakrishna Swami, he has also written works for other things, right? Many people focused on Alva's works and the Acharya's Vyakyanams and so on to publish. He wrote new commentaries for Pillai Perumal Iyengar's works and so on, right? So other works that didn't have commentaries. People like him actually wrote commentaries for that, and then they published them as books. So all of that is very, very useful these days, right? Because we are able to now, where you would have to once upon a time have to go find somebody who knows that and hear them talk about it and learn from that. Now we are able to access all that in a book format, right? And of course, in today's world, the book format is diminishing, and we now we are able to see everything as PDF files. AI has come now with AI. People are going with that now. You can actually go and ask a question in AI and get the answer rather than actually go through an entire book. So things are changing. But these are all the pioneers, when in their times when books were not, published with this kind of content before, and they actually started doing that.
Sorry. And also Acharya daughter now on the use funded Devaganam class or other projects. So Dhanyasmi and நம்ம வந்து எப்படி அந்த மல்டி லாங்குவேஜ் நீங்க எப்படி அது அந்த ஐடியா உங்களுக்கு வந்தது? மல்டி லாங்குவேஜ் இந்த ஒரு பசங்க இங்கிலீஷ் நிறைய யூஸ் பண்ணுவாங்க. ஸோ எப்படி அந்த மல்டி லாங்குவேஜ் தாட் அவங்களுக்கு வந்தது?
It's the first attempt was Prabandham, and I have to thank people who did this work before me, right? Those of you may remember Bhakti List, right? So Mani Varadarajan or Swami California, he did that first attempt that I am aware of. Others might have done it before him, or after him, but he made the first attempt to write the entire him and not just him, right? Many people along with him to type up the Nalaya Divya Prabandham in English, right? So he has a website. I don't know if it's still active or not. Ramanuja.org website. So you guys, if it's still active, you guys may be able to see that text still there, right? So they made that first attempt that I'm aware of. So what my attempt initially was to say, I wanted to type up the Nalaya Prabandham in Tamil, but with the split in not following Tamil grammar, but following the words, right? The meaning with the understood meanings of the words, right? So Tamil grammar, it's a little bit tricky. I don't want to get into all the details, but asai, seer, talai, there is different formats for the words. So நம்ம ஒரு வேர்டு எடுத்துட்டோம்னா அந்த காலத்தை பிரிண்ட் பண்ணும்போது அந்த வேர்டோட மீனிங் மேட்ச் பண்ணி பிரிண்ட் பண்ண மாட்டான், ரைட்? ஸோ தே வில் ஃபாலோ த சீர். ஸோ சீர்னா ஒரு 4 லெட்டர்ஸ் இருந்தால் ஒரு சீர்னு வச்சுக்கோம். ஸோ இஃப் த வேர்ட் இஸ் மேட் ஆஃப் ஒன்லி 3 letters, then they'll take the 4th letter from the next word and add it to this one. So that word will now become broken, right? And then it will borrow other letters from the following words and so on. So now if you read it just like that, and there are books like that out there still, if anybody's interested, I can even share that with you, right? So ஒரு தமிழ் work எடுத்தனா, for example, it will say, random ஆறு சீர் கழி நெடிலடி ஆசிரிய விருத்தம் அப்படின்னு போட்டிருப்பா டைட்டில். இப்போ வந்து 6 சீர் இருக்கு. அரிசீர்னா 6 சீர். ஒரு சீருங்கிறது ஒரு certain number of letters இருக்கணும், ரைட்? ஸோ அப்போ 6 சீர் இருக்கணும்னா அந்த ஒரு லைன்ல 6 சீர் வரணும் அப்படின்னா 6 போர்ஷன்ஸ் ஆஃப் லெட்டர்ஸ் வரணும். ஸோ அது அந்த மாதிரி தான் பிரிண்ட் பண்ணுவான். இஃப் யூ ரீட் தட், இஃப் யூ லுக் அட் தட் அண்ட் ட்ரை டு ரீட் ஃப்ரம் இட், இட்ஸ் வெரி வெரி டிஃபிகல்ட், ரைட்? பிகாஸ் த லெட்டர்ஸ் ஆர் ஆல் ஜம்பிள்ட் அப். So what I did was I said, okay, I'll just, instead of following the grammar, I will try to break the words by the meaning, right? So somebody reads it for the first time, they can see what the words mean, right? Without having to have actually gone to a, done a kalakshepam on it or listen from somebody to give them the meanings. Just by looking at the text itself, they can read it, which helps them pronounce it correctly if they are reading from the book, right? So now a lot of people are not fully versed in the Nalaya Divya Prabandham. They have not memorized it, but they still want to chant it in the temples. So they come and sit in the temple and they take a book and they're not able to chant because the book is printed in this other format where they're not able to read fluently. So by breaking up with words and the meanings, they won't make mistakes. They can read it easily, right? So that was my first attempt. Once I completed that, with all the mistakes it had and everything, typos, we have gone through 4-5 revisions already of that. The idea came that people came and said, எனக்கு வந்து தமிழ் படிக்க முடியல, என்ன பண்றது? So I said, okay, we'll put it in English. So I did the same thing, converted that all into English and presented that. And when I was doing that, people came and said, hey, எனக்கு English fluent வரல. English is not easy to read, right? Especially when you're looking at transliterated words. My brain is not completely tuned to that, right? I can look at it and instantly see what it says. But obviously somebody who's reading it for the first time may not be able to see it. Interestingly, I even got feedback from, there's a professor in Harvard University who is well versed with, he's actually a very devout Jesuit Christian, but he is well versed with Sri Vaishnava theology, right? And he and I are actually in frequent touch, right? He's actually going to publish a book on the meanings of the first 4 Alvar's works, right? Mudal Thiruvandari, Irandam Thiruvandari, and so on. So they actually took the text from acharya.org and reached out for me, asking for my permission. So anyway, long story short, he told me he doesn't like the way I do my transliteration, right? He said that's not a industry standard, right, for publications. So you have to use diacritics. That's what he told me. So if you look at diacritics, that's even more difficult. Unless you're fluent with it, you won't be able to read easily. So people came and said, எனக்கு தெலுங்கு என்னுடைய language, தெலுங்குல தான் ஈஸியா இருக்கும், கன்னடா என்னுடைய language. So eventually I found a software where you can type it in English and apply certain rules for Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, and so on, and then you can process the same English text and it'll put out the the text in multiple languages, right? So that's what I started doing. It was not easy because I had to find out all the rules, and since I cannot read Telugu or Kannada and Malayalam script and so on, I had to go to people who knew those languages and create the rules with their help and printed it and showed it to them, and they say, yeah, looks good, and then I printed them. I still don't know if what I printed out is correct or not, right? Hopefully it is correct, but that's where the whole development came.
That's really amazing, Swami. Like on the software, on the software idea, that was really good. And
yeah, you look, once you have one of the things, right? If you have a goal in sight, right, you can find the tools, right? If you say what you want to do, right, you'll find the tools. That is true for here too, right? If you think about it, right? If your goal is to learn more about the Sampradayam, right, you will find the tools, the people, the information, everything you'll find, right? But if you don't have the goal in mind, you say, well, I'm just casually, going along, then, you won't find it and say, ellame kashtamā irukku, I'm not able to find anything I need, right? And I always find that, right, if you set the goal, you'll find it. And then the other thing, I'll just share this, right? I shared this with my work team yesterday. There is a Navy SEAL training motto, right, that I actually have in front of my desk, right? It says, slow is smooth, smooth is fast, right? So if you go slow and learn properly, but you don't stop learning, right? You don't stop your efforts every day. Because people come and say, how did you end up typing the entire 4,000 It must have taken long. Yes, it took a long time. It's not easy. It was not a 1-day job, 1 week job, 1 month job, 1 year job. It took me, the first round of typing took me more than 2 years. Subsequently, it's a little bit faster, but it still takes like almost 7-8 months before I can retype it and correct everything, right? But if I look at that and go, oh my God, I don't have time 8 months, right? Yeah, I would never get going, right? So I just say, I'll just work on Tirupalland. I'll just work on Tiruchendaviritham. Right? I'll just do something every day. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Because one day you'll find that you've actually gone so far ahead that you didn't even think of it.
Oh, okay, Swami. And like now, like we have the Divya Prabandham English books, like which is really helpful for us. And like if we like resource books like the Acharya.org every reach பண்ணுது.
You can, email me always, or, my number is out there with people. You can always WhatsApp me, or, I'm not on anything else but WhatsApp. I know you youngsters don't like WhatsApp so much. The older people, we seem to live, with WhatsApp only. Even my kids don't use it that much, but yeah, you can email me. You can, text me. You guys can call me directly. I have no issues, right? If somebody, one of you wants to talk to me one-on-one, casually, whatever, right? Just text me and then we will find a time. One of my friend's sons, who's currently in California, right? He actually wanted to talk to me about how, the Seva Vaishya Sampradayam grew in the US in the, the 90s and 2000s, because he's writing some article or book or something about it, right? So while I was driving one day, I was driving for like 2 hours on the road, and I said, I can talk to you now. So for the next 2 hours, he and I were talking on the phone, and he was recording the whole thing. So I'm available to anybody who who wants to have any conversation anytime. Right? Just let me know. I'm not always free, but if we are really interested, we can set aside a time.
Okay, Swami, thank you.
Swami. கரெக்ட். இந்த மேஜர் ப்ராஜெக்ட்டுக்கு கண்டிப்பா எவ்வளவு என்ன சொன்னாலும் இதுக்கு ஈடு இல்ல. தலையே இல்லால் கை மாறலின்னு தான் சொல்லணும். ஏன்னா அவன் சொல்ற மாதிரி எனக்கெல்லாமே ஆச்சரிய.orgல தான் அசெட். அது இல்லைன்னா எங்களுக்கே பிரபந்தம் சேவிக்க முடியாது ஆக்சுவலி. ஸோ அம்மா ஊர்ல நிறைய புக்ஸ் கொடுத்து விடுவேன் வா, என்னால எங்களுக்கு எதுவுமே வேண்டாம், இந்த ஒரு வெப்சைட் இருக்கு, இதுல எல்லாமே சொல்லிப்போ, எங்க போனாலும் தான் சொல்லிப்போ. இங்க ஒரு புக்கு கூட கிடையாது எங்கள்கிட்ட, திவ்ய பிரபந்தம் புக்கு. அவன் சொல்ற மாதிரி ஆச்சரிய. இல்லைன்னா எங்களாலுமே பிரபந்தம் சேவிக்க முடியாது. அந்த மாதிரிதான் அதை வச்சு
நிறைய பேர் யூஸ் பண்ணா தெரியும் எனக்கு. பிகாஸ் நான் வேடிக்கை சொல்லுவேன், அந்த முமுட்சு படியில வாச்சக பிரபாவம் போதுன்ட்டு வாட்ச பிரபாவம்னு வரும். அடிக்கடி சொல்லுவேன், people know the website more than they know me. Right? So many people know me that way, right? They'll say, TCA Venkade, you're the Acharya.org website owner, right? Abdi solli then they'll find out who I am. And I've gone to some temples in India also where I've seen people using it. Not now, I'm talking 15 years ago, where printed formula அந்த ஃபோல்டர்ல எல்லாம் பிரிண்ட் பண்ணி வச்சு படிச்சுட்டு இருப்பேன். அப்படி எட்டி பார்ப்பேன், பார்த்தா கீழே ஆச்சாரியா போட்டிருக்கோம். சரி, ஓகே, நம்ம தான் யூஸ் பண்றோம். ஐ வில் நோ இட். சோ
எக்ஸாக்ட்லி. இல்ல ஃபர்ஸ்ட் நாங்க இனிஷியலா உங்களை அப்ரோச் பண்ணும்போதே நாங்க ரொம்ப ஆச்சரியப்பட்டோம். நாங்க அதுதான் யூஸ் பண்ணிருக்கோம், அவர்கிட்ட தான் பேச போறோமான்னு ஃபர்ஸ்ட் இனிஷியலா ஆயர் சிமியருக்கு பேசும்போது கூட நாங்க ரொம்ப ஆச்சரியப்பட்டோம். சுவாமிகிட்ட தான் பேச போறோமா இவர்கிட்ட அப்படின்ற மாதிரி இருந்தது. ஸோ வெரி நைஸ். அந்த நிஜமாவே அந்த ப்ராஜெக்ட் இட்ஸ் அ கிரேட் அசெட் எங்களுக்கு. நெக்ஸ்ட் அனிருத் அண்ட் அரவிந்த் அவ ஹேண்ட் ரைஸ் பண்ணிருக்கா. நீ கேக்குறிய குட்டி?
எனக்கு question how should everyone மோட்சத்தை attain பண்ணறதுக்கு every one person lead பண்ணணும் our life?
I'm not quite following. What was the question again?
மோட்சத்தை attain பண்ணறதுக்கு every one person lead பண்ணணும் our life.
Oh, how do you lead a life after you desire moksha? Good question. So when you say you want to attain moksham, right? It's not just I have the desire, right? Like I said, the சாஸ்திரமே சொல்றது ஞானான் மோக்ஷகான்னு சொல்றது. Through knowledge comes moksha, right? So the desire is the first step. The knowledge has to come after that, right? When you get the knowledge, it's not just the knowledge of what moksha is. It's the knowledge of how to live your life also that goes with it. So then when you decide to, have, certain, like Munadi and Sonal, yeah, you will surround yourself with the right kind of people, right? You will start moving with the people who have similar interests. You see that in life too, right? If you're in school, college, whatever, right? In work, if you have certain interests, you start moving with those kind of people more than anybody else, right? You may have a lot of other friends, But let's say bowling is, that is a passion of your life, right? What do you do then? You hang out with people who are bowlers, right? Now and then I'm a runner, right? I like to run on the roads, right? So I have a lot of friends, and I'm in groups where people who run are in those groups, and they talk about running and where they ran yesterday, today, etc., etc. Right? That encourages you to do your own running and then share that also. Right? So similarly, right? நமக்கு வந்து ஒரு மோட்சம் ஆசை இருக்கு, கோவில் ஆசை இருக்கு, பெருமாள் இன்ட்ரெஸ்ட் இருக்குன்னா நம்ம என்ன பண்ணுவோம்? We'll tend to go to the கோவில் more. We'll tend to hang out with people. The subject naturally will drift towards it, right? We start talking this as a subject, right? With people. Once you do that, right, you will start living that life on your own. Right? You don't have to தன்னடையே கழியும் சொல்லுவா சிலர், right? You don't have to force it, right? Certain things will automatically leave you. Certain things will automatically get into your system. Right? But the desire is the first step. Getting the knowledge is the next step, and then moving with the people with similar, right, which automatically will happen, right? முமுக்ஷு படின்னு ஒரு ஒர்க் இருக்கு. அதுல ஒரு பெரிய சூழ்நிலை இருக்கு, துவயம் பிரகரணம். ஒரு பிரகரணத்துல the first சூழ்நிலை it talks about a lot of things. Then it finishes by saying இப்படி இருக்கும் ஒரு ஸ்ரீ வைஷ்ணவனோட ஏற்றம் அறிந்து அவனோட இருக்குன்னு. அது மாதிரி ஒரு, I'm not giving a very approximate, I'm not giving exact words, but it says how you need to be, right? ஒரு 10 things it tells. இப்படிதான் இருக்கணும், இப்படிதான் இருக்கணும், இப்படிதான் இருக்கணும். So it's called அதிகாரின்னு சொல்லுவாரு. அதிகாரினா qualification. These are the qualifications you need அப்படின்னு it lists out. But at the end of the list it says, நீ இதெல்லாம் உனக்கு இல்லாட்டா கூட இதெல்லாம் இருக்கிற ஒரு ஸ்ரீ வைஷ்ணவன் ஆர் ஒரு நல்ல ஒரு மனுஷன் அவனோட நீ இருக்கணும், ரைட்? If you be with that person, that itself is enough, right? So you start then being with that kind of person, then you will learn, right? From looking at them, you will see how they are living their lives, and you will start modeling your own life out of that.
Daniel. இப்போ அனிருக்கு ஒரு question இருக்கு.
Dhanyasmi Swami. Another question வந்து, do we get God's blessing even if we make any mistakes or forget doing our duties?
நான் முதல்ல ஒன்று சொன்னேன் இல்லையா, விமுகம் ஆபிமுக்கியம்னு சொன்னேன் இல்லையா. So vimukam is turning your face away, abhimukyam is turning your face towards, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what our acharya say, that God's mercy, his grace is always flowing towards us, right? There's a very famous line in a work called Srivachana Bhushanam, which starts by this long churning. Tripat vibhutile paripurna guna anubavam nadavan irukku, adu undadu urukkaatade அப்படின்னு ஆரம்பிச்சு பெருசா சொல்லும்போது தேசாந்தர கதனான புத்தன் பக்கலே பித்ரு இதயம் கிடக்குமா போலே அப்படின்னு. So what that one says is, Perumal is full of joy. He is in Paramadam. He's surrounded by Nityatmas and Muktatmas who are all praising him, and he's looking at them with affection, and his mercy is flowing towards him and so on. But he's still got a little bit of sadness in his heart, right? Why? He's saying, just like a father or a mother who has all her children with her and or with them in their house, but there's one child who's living in a foreign country. So on a Deepavali varudhu, on that day they're all celebrating and everyone's happy, but the parents are feeling a little bit sad because they're saying, this one child is missing, right? Or she's missing, and because they're away from me. If they were also with us, how wonderful it would be. So on the example தான் எடுக்கிறாங்க, தேசாந்தர கதனான புத்தன் பக்கலே பித்ரு ஹிருதயம் கிடக்குமா போலே. So the thought of the father is with that child who's away. Similarly, Perumal's grace is always flowing towards us, but he's always sad that we are not taking the necessary steps. So when we are vimukha, we turn our face away from him. His grace is still flowing towards us. Then when we are abhimukha, when we turn our face towards him, basically understand our relationship and surrender to him through an acharya, then also the grace doesn't change. Right? It's just your attitude changes. Right? That's all that change in this case. So if you say, now வந்து என்னுடைய duties நான் பண்ணாம இருந்துட்டேன்னா பெருமாள் grace விழுமானா, it will follow. Right? It's not going to stop just because you stopped your duties. But that doesn't mean you stop your duties, right? So what is his position and what is your position? That's how you have to look at it, right? You should not sit in the middle and look at both. From his viewpoint, these are small transgressions, and his mercy flows irrespective of that. From our viewpoint, these are big transgressions, right? So then we have to say, நான் பண்ணக்கூடாது, தப்பு நான் பண்ணக்கூடாதுன்னு நம்ம நினைச்சுக்கணும், right? We should not say, oh, his mercy always, falls on us, whether I do my duty or not. So why should I do my duty? Right? That's the, that may be from his viewpoint, not from your viewpoint, right? From your viewpoint, you are supposed to do it because our elders, our Shastras say these are our duties, we have to do that. நான் வந்து இப்போ ஒரு மோக்ஷம், to attain மோக்ஷம், right? What do we do? ஒரு famous example that our acharyas give is, ஒரு எலுமிச்சம்பழத்தை கொடுத்து ஒரு ராஜ்யத்தை வாங்குமா போல. So let's assume there was one very poor person. He went to visit the king. He didn't have anything to give, right? He went there. He had 2 lemons, right? That's all he had in his hand. So he kept one for himself. He took one other, went to the king and said, "Oh, king, I come to see you." King said, "Okay, very happy that you came to see me. You are such a learned person, everything." And said, "What have you brought for me?" And the guy didn't have anything in his hand. So he just found that one lemon, right? And he gave it to the king and said, "Yes, I brought this for you." The king was so pleased, he gave half his kingdom to the guy. So the next day, another guy went and said, "I will give a lemon and get the other half of the kingdom," right? And so he goes and tries to give the lemon, and the king kicks him out. The reason it worked in the first case and did not work in the second case was the first case, the guy didn't expect anything. He just gave it to him, right? And said, "This is all I have." Is the value of the lemon the same as half the kingdom? No, it's not. Right? From your perspective, the lemon is just a small thing you gave. From the king's perspective, even though the lemon was a small thing, out of his joy and greatness, he thought it was good enough to give half his kingdom away. So the viewpoints are different, right? From our viewpoint, a small thing. From his viewpoint, is a big thing. So from moksham adayathukku namma enna panna mudiyum? No, we say I perform surrender. I tell Perumal, I surrender to you. I am not going to do anything more than that. This is all I'm capable of. I surrender to you. From that viewpoint, it's a very small thing. But he chooses to say that as a very big thing, right? And say, I'm going to give you moksha, the biggest, the best thing I can give, right? The greatest thing I can give, I'm going to give it to you for something. What you did was a very, very small step. So if you say, right, it's 1,000,000 steps to, let's say, to climb, right, to top of the mountain. All you did was you took the first step. That's all you did. You didn't climb the 1,000,000 steps. But the person sitting on the top saw that first step and grabbed you and pulled you up to the top. So do we then say, well, if we can take 900,999, whatever number of steps, why should I even take the first step, right? Why can't he just grab me from the ground itself and take me up there, right? So therefore, I won't even take the first step. If you think like that, right, it won't happen. Right? You have to take the first step. Once you take the first step, right, the fact that it happens is out of his grace, but that doesn't dissolve, the fact that you need to, do your work, right? So நம்முடைய கடமை, நம்முடைய duties நம்ம பண்ணணும். ஆனா we should not try to barter that, right? That's why that the second guy went and tried to barter, tried to get other kingdom, got kicked out because he was saying, "Oh, if I take the one step, therefore you have to, pull me up to the top," right? And that won't happen.
I see. Then use me, Swami.
Chaitanya?
Adiyan Swami.
Hey.
So I am in 11th grade right now, and I'm soon going to go to college. And my question was, how should I explain to my friends and dorm mates that I don't eat onion, garlic? What is the reasoning behind this? I'm trying to understand.
I'll give you a very simple, answer, and maybe you can develop from that, right?
Okay.
Everyone sets limits on what they eat. Everyone does, right? There's no one person out there who eats everything. So what is your limit, right? That's all it is. It all comes to, the fact that, you have certain limits and they have certain limits, right? So if you're a vegetarian, you say, I have a certain limit, where I say, I will not eat anything but, vegetables and so on. If you're a vegan, right, you say, I won't even take milk and so on. So you set a different limit. The guy who eats meat, right? They don't eat everything, right? In this country, for example, dog meat or horse meat is completely taboo, right? No one will eat that. But if you go to another country, right, there, dog meat is okay, right? People actually eat that. Right? They have no problems with that, right? Some other religions place, you cannot eat pork, you cannot eat this. So everyone sets limits, right? So all you're saying is, what? in my system, in what I believe in, these are my limits, right? That I won't eat onions and garlic, and there is no need for anybody to question that, because because you yourself are setting your own limits, right?
Yeah.
I even once upon a time I had, as to, back, in my college days, somebody, was asking me about this, and I said, look, you won't eat human flesh, right? Why not?
Right.
Why would you not eat? Oh, it's cannibalism. Well, I said, why is cannibalism bad? Because there are certain, tribes that used to be cannibals, and they didn't see anything wrong with that. So
Yeah.
in human thought, you can clearly see that some humans used to believe it was okay, but in a more westernized, or even more, not even necessarily westernized, even Eastern religions, we say that that's completely taboo, right? That's not acceptable.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm like, you don't have to kill a human being, right? If there's a dead human, and if you eat that, you're not even killing somebody, right? And
Right.
I don't know if you know that very famous Argentinian airplane crash, thing that happened. I don't know if ever saw that movie or saw
I think
the.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were out in the Andes, right? And they got stuck for like 50 days, something like that. And they ended up eating, the bodies of some of the co-passengers, right?
Right.
So anyway, I'm not saying this just to justify anything, right? But I'm saying, at that point, right, when it came to survival, they said that was okay, that the taboo got lifted by themselves, right? Saying, we need to survive by doing this, right?
Right.
So the common position I would take is, right, it's just your limit, right? Your personal limit, and no one needs to question that. That's why I said you need to be strong in what you believe in, right? This
Right,
is my
yeah.
limitations. Now, if you want to go traditional, somebody else, right? You can say, we say, onions and garlic are, they develop the base qualities, right? So the human qualities are divided into, sattvic, rajasic and tamasic qualities, right? And we say
Right. Yeah.
these certain types of food, they, instead of developing the sattvic qualities, they develop the rajasic and tamasic qualities, right? Which is anger and sleep and, all that stuff, right? That's why
Right.
we avoid them, right? I jokingly,
Right.
and
Yeah.
don't take me serious on this. I even tell people, right? If you avoid all this and you still get too angry, maybe you should eat this, right? The goal is to be
Yeah.
sattvic by not eating them. But if you cannot develop, then maybe that's not what's limiting you. Anyway, jokes aside, right?
Right.
I personally think now, if you can want to talk traditionally, you can say, in the qualities now, I don't need this quality, so I'm doing this. Or you can say, hey, these are my personal limitations, right? And no one needs to be bothered by them.
Got it. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Adiyan Ramajadas.
Okay. Rishi?
Adian. So I have a question. In the morning when I go to school, I have to do Sandhyavandanam and say Pasuram for Perumal. But sometimes I don't have time, so which one should I prioritize?
Well, ரெண்டு இருக்கு இல்லையா? You talked about one which is praying to Perumal and reciting verses, and you also talk about Sandhya. Sandhya, praying to Perumal and reciting verses, there is no time limits on these things, right? You do anytime you want. While going to school, you can decide if you want in your mind, right? In school, you can do it and so on. Sayangalathu vandavru, you can do it, right? At night, you can do it. In fact, we have, these, certain, like, chanting Perumal's names before doing any activity, right? Kathal erundone Hari Hari nu solli erundukano. ராத்திரி தூங்க போச்சே மாதவான்னு சொல்லிட்டு தூங்க போனோம். அது மாதிரி வெளியில போச்சே கேசவான்னு சொல்லிட்டு போனோம். சாப்பிடச்சே கோவிந்தா. அது மாதிரி there, even associated with your daily activities, you can recite Perumal's names. Perumal's name is mantram, right? It's not any different. If you say how, right? இதுல நம்முடைய ஆச்சாரியஸ் have shown that, right? You put Om in front and Namaha in the end, right? It becomes a mantra. So if you say, I say, Vishnu, right? And you say, oh, Om Vishnave Namaha, so now mantra maayiduthu. Vishnu is the Nama. By adding Om Namaha, it became a mantra. So if you want to recite mantras, you can recite Perumal's name itself as a mantra. Even you don't have to put Om and Namaha in the end front. Perumal per chonnale podu, right? That itself is a mantra, right? Or if you want to recite Arvas verses and so on. So that's one thing. Now Sandhyavandanam is very limited, right? Because you have to do it 3 times a day, and Sandhi is basically the meeting point, right? So when day meets night and night meets day, right? Those are the 2 points are called as Sandhi. So there is Pratha Sandhyavandanam or Pratha Sandhya, which is morning, Sayam Sandhya, which is evening. So in the morning, night meets day, and in the evening, day meets night, right? So that period is known as Sandhi. So the rules are that at that moment of Sandhi, when the sun is about to rise, you do Sandhya Vandanam morning, or when the sun is about to set, you do the evening Sandhya Vandanam. The Madhyanikam is not a Sandhi, right? It's just when the sun is at the zenith, it is the highest point. Now, if you're able to do it in those very specific times, perfect. That's what you want to do, in that very moment of that. If you cannot do it in those moments, in the Shastras allow you, right? You can do a Prayaschitta Argyam and, do it another time. So, depending on your situation, right? If you want to do Sandhya Vandanam morning and you don't, if it get delayed, you do the Prayaschitta Argyam and you finish it. Same thing for the, Madhyanikam or evening, right? I know some people who do morning Sandhya Vandanam and Madhyanikam at the same time, even though Madhyanikam is supposed to be done in the, when the sun is in, the highest point, but they are at work, obviously they cannot do it at that time. So morning said to do it. Right or wrong, I don't know. There are different opinions on these things, right? Some people say, no, that is not acceptable. Knowingly doing it earlier, it's meant if you accidentally miss it, then you do the, the Prayaschitta Argyam and do it, but you cannot plan it and do it, wake up. I wake up only at 9 every day and every day I give a Prayaschitta Argyam is not acceptable. Some people say it's okay. At least you're still doing it, right? Versus saying, there are people who don't do it at all, right? So talk to your Acharya and, go from there. That's what I would say.
Okay, thank you. Adiyan Danyasmi.
அடுத்தது சாருஸ்ரீ.
அடியேன் என் கேள்வி வந்து தசாவதாரம் வந்து பெருமாளோட அவதாரம்னு சொல்லவா? அதுல வந்து பலராமரும் ஒரு அவதாரம். ஆனா வந்து பலராமர் வந்து ஆதிசேஷனோட மறு அவதாரம். சோ வந்து ஆதிசேஷனோட ஃபார்ம் அவர். அதனால எதுக்காக வந்து ஆதிசேஷன பலராமரை வந்து தசாவதாரத்துல சொல்லுவார்?
அதாவது certain things we say it's not limited to one person, right? So one of the things we say in the Sampradayam is in Paramadatla போய் நம்ம பெருமாள் கைங்கரியம் பண்றோம். So எப்படி கைங்கரியம் பண்ணுவாங்க? எப்படி வேணா கைங்கரியம் பண்ணலாம். You can do கைங்கரியம்ஸ் in any which way you want. அப்படின்னா not just in one form, you can take multiple forms and do கைங்கரியம். So you can be, in one form you can do to take our own experience, right? And say, நான் பெருமாளுக்கு flowers garlands பண்ணி தரேன், அது ஒரு கைங்கரியம். Another person say, நான் அந்த garland கொண்டு போய் சன்னதியில் கொடுக்குறேன், அது ஒரு கைங்கரியம். Another person, நான் தீர்த்த எடுத்து கொடுக்குறேன் பெருமாளுக்கு, அது ஒரு கைங்கரியம். Another person may say, நான் பெருமாளை வந்து தோல்ல வந்து வேலை பண்ணிட்டு போறேன், அது ஒரு கைங்கரியம். Another person, I'll make food for Perumal, that's another கைங்கரியம். So we are limited in this world by, we can do only one thing at a time, right? So we get limited by that. We say in Paramavadam, we are not limited by like that. You can be the person who's making the garland and be the person who's also cooking at the same time, right? Simultaneously, you can do both. You can take two different forms and do that. So when we have that kind of a luxury, we say, in these avataram also, they can be a mix of Perumal and, another person. So for example, நம்மாழ்வார் எடுத்துட்டோம்னா நம்ம சொல்றோம், நம்மாழ்வார் வந்து திருக்குறுங்குடி பெருமாளே வந்து நம்மாழ்வாரா வந்து அவதரித்தார். Right? He took Tirukkurungudy Perumal, he took the avataram of Nammalvar. But we also say Nammalvar is the avataram of Seni Mudaliya, right? So how is it both? It's both because they both can be present in that one form, and take care of two different things, right? So in this case, we say Balarama is the avataram of Perumal. Remember, it's an Avesh avatar, right? It's not a Purna avatar. So under certain periods, Perumal Avesham was happened, and certain actions took place. Therefore, he is Perumal's avataram. But the rest of the time, we say, he was Adisesha's avataram, and so he only came, the full period was Adisesha, but in between there were some moments when Perumal's Avesham happened.
Okay, Mama. Thank you, Sri. அப்புறம் மாமா
அடியன் சுவாமி, எனக்கு இன்னொரு கொஸ்டின் இருக்கு.
I'm not able to hear you.
நம்ம சம்பிரதாயம் வந்து நம்ம ஜெனரேஷன் லைக் தி யூத்ஸ் அவங்களுக்கு வந்து எப்படி ஸ்ப்ரெட் பண்ணிட்டு எப்படி வந்து
convince பண்ணது நம்ம சம்பிரதாயம் join பண்ணதுக்கு, and what is the benefit of for like them to join our சம்பிரதாயம்?
Okay, I don't know who's asking. Is a parent asking a question, or is it a younger person himself who's asking the question?
It's a younger person.
Okay, because you also spoke about, how do we teach the kids, right? So I was not quite sure. Okay, from a parent's perspective, right? I would say that first, what is the best way to convince somebody of something? Is that you live it first, right? If you don't do something, right? If you, for example, you go to a child and say, do Sandhya Vandanam 3 times a day, but you don't do it, you have lost the, the ground, right? You don't have a moral ground to, to tell somebody do something when you yourself are not doing it. A person who says, you should not eat onion and garlic to the child, but they themselves eat it, right? It won't make sense, right? So from an elder's perspective, right, you have to live it and show it to them, right? And when you live it and show it to them, it's more convincing. That's one thing. Number two, right, the best you can do as a parent is to show them the way, right? I mean, you can show them the path, what the path they select and how they go, right? This may be a very radical thought, so I apologize to people who may not like it. But this, I'm expressing it as a personal opinion. Is our responsibility is to show them, what we know, right? The path they take is going to be their own path, right? And it will be them and Perumal who take that path, right? I don't think anybody can force anybody down, this is the way to do it. Again, radical thought, if you don't like it, I'm just saying that, right? Will it work? Sometimes it works. Sometimes you're able to force somebody to go down a path, right? And they follow it and they never waver from it. But sometimes they may not, right? They may protest and say, I don't like you forcing me on this. But if you just show them the information, give them the information and let them select, right? Maybe they will be more convinced, right, in going down that path than otherwise. That like I said, it could be radical to some people, but I'm just expressing it as an opinion. But the important thing, though, is you have to show them the path. Right? You have to show them what you have learned, pass along that information. இப்படி ஒரு கல்ச்சர் இருக்கு, இப்படி ஒரு சம்பிரதாயம் இருக்கு, இப்படி ஒரு விஷயம் இருக்கு, right? And then you've done what your most important thing that you have to do. Right? From the youth's perspective, right? When your parents live it and they show it to you, look at it like I said in the beginning, right? Have an open mind. Right? Learn, ask your questions. You don't feel like, I have to do it. Feel it like I have to do it because I know, right? Not because I don't know. Right? Because when you finally learn, you realize you have to do it, right? But you come to that point by learning and understanding versus being just forced into it. Right? So, for what do I tell the youth, right? Is let's just like you would learn any subject, right? Learn this. The information is out there. In today's world, you can reach anybody, you can talk to people, you can, 30, 40, 50 years ago, right? It was impossible, right? You would have to be in a certain place in a certain time, and you have to fight to get the time that somebody learned and so on. Now, you're flooded with information, right? So that excuse is no longer there. So learn it like any other subject, figure it out, right? And once you figure it out, right, then you will be convinced. And when you have that conviction will never waver, right? It's when you're forced into something, right, you won't have that conviction. But if you yourself have seen it and you have understood it, right, and you have learned it, then your conviction is going to be that much stronger.
ஆக்சுவலி அதான் இங்க இவளுக்கு எப்படி டவுட்னா, இங்க ஏஜ் பசங்க எல்லாம் நிறைய பேர் புதுசா பண்ணும்போது, இப்ப இங்க ஒரு கோஷ்டி குரூப் எல்லாம் வச்சுருக்கோம் கனடால. சோ அவ நியூவா உள்ள வரா, எனக்கு ரொம்ப ஒண்ணுமே தெரியாது சம்பிரதாயத்துல அப்படின்னு சொல்லும் போது, இந்த குட்டி பசங்களாவே அவாக்குள்ள நீங்க எல்லாம் பேசுங்க. சோ தட் இதுல சேட் பண்ணி அவளுக்கு அந்த ஏஜ்ல எப்படி இன்ட்ரெஸ்ட் இருக்கோ அந்த மாதிரி அவளோட பெனிஃபிட்ஸோ, இல்ல நீ எப்படி இதுல ஆசையா வந்த, உனக்கு இதுல என்ன புரிஞ்சுட்டு இருக்க, அதை நீ அவளுக்கு எக்ஸ்பிளைன் பண்ணு அப்படின்றதுக்காக இப்ப 3 டிப்ஸ் அவளுக்கு சொல்லணும். நம்ம சம்பிரதாயத்துல இந்த மாதிரி எனக்கு ஒரு பெனிஃபிட் இருக்கு, எனக்கு இது ரொம்ப பிடிச்சிருக்கு அப்படின்னு நீங்க கேட்டானா என்ன சொல்வேல்? ஒரு 3 பாயிண்ட் சொல்லணும்னா.
I think it's different for different people, right? I would hesitate to say, these are the, 3 things that work for everybody, right? Different and again, it depends on, and where you're, right, and the age of the person and so on. Like, for example, if you tell this to a, it doesn't have to be a young person, right? There are a lot of people who come to the Sampradayam when they're pretty old, right?
Correct.
50 வயசு வரைக்கும் நான் எதையுமே கவனிக்காம இருந்தேன், நான் பாட்டுக்கு வாழ்ந்துட்டு இருந்தேன். Now suddenly, I'm close to retirement and I feel like I need to go to the temple and learn everything now.
ஆமா.
சில பேர் வந்து, shockingly, some people even talked about deliberately, right? They say, well, வந்து சமாஷணம் பண்ணிட்டேன்னா நான் இதெல்லாம் சாப்பிடக்கூடாது, இப்படிலாம் ரெஸ்ட்ரிக்ஷன் போட்டிருக்கா, அதெல்லாம் நான் 75 வயசுல பண்ணிக்கலாம்னு இருக்கேன் அப்படின்னு they make a plan, right, at the age of 40 and 30 and so on, right? As if we know we're going to live that long and be around to do it at that time, right? So அவளுக்கு வந்து நம்ம வந்து certain things present பண்ணுவோம் இல்லையா, certain information you have to present in a different way, right? You can go and tell them the same thing that you would tell a child, right? For them you have to give, here's the reasons why the Sampradaya will make a difference in your life and so on, right? Versus a child may not understand. ஒரு குழந்தை கூட யாரும் கேட்டா அந்த மோட்சம் எப்படின்னு, right? மோட்சம்னா என்னன்னு தெரிஞ்சுக்கிறதுக்கே ஒரு certain amount of knowledge has to happen, right? I'm not saying a child won't have it. There are some children who, at the age of 5, 6 fully understand that, and there are some people who are 50 and 60 who still don't understand it, right? So நம்மளுடைய journey, நம்மளுடைய mindset அது எப்படி இருக்கோ அதுக்கு தகுந்த மாதிரி I think those top 3 things or whatever you're looking for, right, will change, I think, right? So சொல்றவா வந்து அவ கேட்கறவா எப்படி இருக்கான்னு புரிஞ்சுது அதுக்கு தகுந்த மாதிரி they have to present it.
ஓகே.
இப்போ நம்ம இந்த செஷன் எடுத்துட்டோம்னு வச்சுக்கோங்க, இப்போ நம்ம வந்து ஒரு குழந்தைங்களை சொல்லும் போது ஒரு காமன் லாங்குவேஜ் தான் பேச முடியும். நான் வந்து ஸ்ரீ பாஷ்யத்துலேருந்து சொல்றேன், அப்புறம் வந்து ஈட்டிலேருந்து எடுக்கிறேன்னு சொல்லி எடுத்தேன்னா வந்து இட் won't work well for them, right? But whereas if there's a learned person who has already learned some of these things, right, அவங்கிட்ட போய் நம்ம வந்து ஜெனரிக்கா பேச முடியாது. So I think they understand the audience and accordingly presenting is important.
Yes, correct.
But in general, குழந்தைங்களுக்கு on a common platform, I would say it's it's universally you can find some things, right? I think we can find certain things for children, young children who are just learning the Sampradayam. But I would say focus on certain things like இப்போ நான் சொன்ன மாதிரில ஒரு certain things நம்ம இப்படி ட்ரெஸ் பண்ணிக்கிறது, கோயில் வந்தா இப்படி இருக்கிறது, தினம் நெத்தி கட்டுக்கிறது, பெரியவாழ்கிட்ட போய் கேள்வி கேட்கறது, தயக்கம் இல்லாமல் இருக்கிறது. அதே சமயம் with the due respect you ask those questions. If you're not, if I gave certain answers, right, they may not, I'll be frank, right, they may not be even the right answers. Some of the questions I may have given incorrect answer, right? Or what I thought was the right answer but may not be acceptable to everybody, and that's okay, right? That is okay. I gave you my answer, right? If you feel that is insufficient, is incomplete or incorrect, go ask somebody else, right? Learn from somebody else and say, எனக்கு இந்த மாதிரி ஒரு பதில் கிடைச்சது, but I'm not convinced. And they may say, what, that person didn't give you the exact thing, but yet let me give you, and maybe that answer is acceptable, right? But only by exploring and learning you will figure that out. The thing that I don't like the most is when somebody says, authoritatively, இங்க தான் போகணும், அங்கதான் போகக்கூடாது, இதுதான் பதில், இதுக்கு மேல நீ கேள்வி கேட்கக்கூடாது, அப்படி சொல்றவங்க I try to avoid personally, right?
Right. கண்டிப்பா.
I mean, certain things are authoritative, right? நம்ம வந்து அதுல வந்து ஸ்டடியா இருக்கணும். பெருமாள் நம்ம சொல்றோம், நமக்கு ஸ்ரீமன் நாராயணன் சொல்றோம், அதுல வந்து நமக்கு டவுட் இருக்கக்கூடாது. அதுலனா வந்து நான் வந்து சந்தேகமா இருக்கு, இன்கம்ப்ளீட்டா இருக்குன்னு சொன்னா, then neither the person who asks the question is getting it, neither am I saying it rightly, because if I say that is also doubtful, right, then that's not good. I'll tell you, a story that you guys probably all know well, probably, but I'll tell it anyway, right, for those who may not. ஸோ இப்போ ஸ்ரீரங்கத்தில் பராசரப்பட்டர் இருக்காரு, அவர் வந்து காலக்ஷேபம் பண்ணிட்டு இருக்காரு. அவருடைய காலக்ஷேபத்துக்கு lot of people will come in because he's very learned scholar in both in Sampradayam and Tamil also is very very learned in Tamil, so a lot of people come and listen to his kalakshepams. அவருடைய audience வந்து all obviously mixed group, right? People with extreme very knowledgeable people and people who don't know anything, right? Everybody is attending it. ஒரு ரொம்ப பெரிய வயசான ஒரு elderly person used to come every day, not very knowledgeable, right? But knew just basic stuff in Sampradayam, that's all he knows. அவர் வந்து கிளம்பும் போது பராசரப்பட்டு அவர் வந்து அவர் சீட்ல உட்கார வச்சு அவர் மரியாதை பண்ணி அவர் வெத்தலை பாக்கெல்லாம் கொடுத்து எல்லாம் பண்ணி கௌரவம் பண்ணி he will send him home. Another great known well known scholar would come and he would attend. And when he leaves, Butter would not look at him and say, "Okay, thank you for coming. Bye bye." So the disciples were very curious. You're giving such respect to the one who doesn't know much, but you're giving great respect to the person who is known as a well-known scholar. Why? So he said, "Okay, let me demonstrate this to you tomorrow." So the next day, when the scholar comes, he goes to him and says, "What is Tattva?" The scholar says, "Well, Tattvam is many things, right? Different philosophies. There is, this philosophy is there, that philosophy is there. This one says this is Tattvam, that one says that's Tattvam, and so on." Says, "Okay, what is the the means to the goal?" "Well, there are many different means. There's this means, we can go to Perumal by this way, that way. There is no one clear means to Perumal." So and so on, right? So everything has, right? The guy is showing his knowledge that he has learned so many things, right? But he's not able to give one answer that he's convinced of. So Butter sends him off on his way. Then this elderly person comes in. Butter asks him the same question. And that person said, when he asked him, he said, "What is Tattvam? What is the means, Upayam, and so on?" அவர் தள்ள கை வச்சு உட்காந்துட்டார். "என்னது இது? நான் பராசர பட்டர் இவ்வளவு பெரிய ஸ்காலர் வச்சுன்னு நான் உட்காந்து கேட்டுட்டு இருக்கேன். இது தத்துவம் என்ன, உபாயம் என்ன, உபயம் என்ன, பேசிக் கேள்வி என்ன கேட்கறீங்க? நீங்க சொல்லணும்னு நான் கேட்கறேன். ஸ்ரீமன் நாராயணன் தான் தத்துவம். அவன் அடையறதுக்கு வழி அவனோட திருவிடி தான் வழி. இதுக்கு மேல என்ன இருக்கு கேள்வி?" So Butter gave him all the thing, and as usual, and sent him off. And now he's looked at the disciples and said, "Look, right? This is why the difference. He may not know much, but what he needs to know, what he needs to be convinced on, he's very convinced and very staunch on. This guy knows everything, but he's not convinced on anything." So you have to find that person, right? You don't want to find the person who knows a lot, but who's not going to be convinced on very basic things, right? So when you ask questions, when I say go, if I say something and you don't like it, right? But if I'm not convinced on certain things, then I'm not the right person to ask the question, right? You have to find the person who's very convinced on certain things. And if you still don't like the answer, you're still not, have some open things, then you go and ask somebody else. But you have to make sure that the person you reach to is not going to be, just, a store of information without, conviction. And, I hope I didn't come across like that, right? So.
Again, right, again. நீங்க சொல்ற மாதிரி எல்லாம் நம்மளோட கொஸ்டின்ஸ் அண்ட் ஆன்சர்ஸ்க்கு நம்மளோட ஆச்சாரியன்ல இருந்தே எல்லாமே கிடைச்சிருக்கும்னு நினைக்கிறேன், இல்லையா?
Everything is there. You have to go find it, right? I mean, there's, like I said, கொஞ்சம் எஃபர்ட் போடணும் இல்லையா? எல்லாமே எனக்கு அப்படியே நான் உட்கார்ந்த இடத்துல கிடைக்கும்னு எதிர்பார்க்க கூடாது.
மாடி ரொம்ப ரைட்லி சார். பட் நாட் லீஸ்ட் இந்த குட்டீஸ் வேற யாராவது கொஸ்டின்ஸ் கேக்குறீங்களா? ரங்கஸ்ரீ அவர் பத்மஸ்ரீ வேற யாராவது கொஸ்டின்ஸ் இருக்கா, இல்ல வேற யாருக்காவது?
All wonderful questions, right? And one of the things I back recently late has not happened, but now inga goshtik pogumbodhu periyavara and kelli keppaanga. So it's not just the kids who are asking questions, right? Even the elders come and ask questions and say, "Enak idhula sandegama irukku, enak adula sandegama irukku." Some people are shy to ask it in public, right? So they'll ask only in private, right? And I always tell people, right, don't be shy, right? I mean, asking questions, nothing wrong. Like I said, like I think it was Nanjiya, right? Or Nambulle. One of them asked a question, "Edukku namakku thayaruடைய mediation தேவை?" Today we made சம்பிரதாயத்துக்கு சொல்லுவா, இது ரொம்ப ஃபண்டமெண்டல் கொஸ்டின். இந்த கேள்வியை கேட்டார், அவ்வளவு பெரிய ஆச்சாரிய கேள்வி கேட்டார். Not only he was not shy of asking the question, the person who was recording was not shy to record it and say, "Here, this acharya asked this question," and actually put it in Guru Parampara, right? Saying this question was asked. So there is no such thing as, I used to be a teacher back in the day, right? I used to teach physics to my students. I always say that, right? It's a cliche, but I say it, right? There's no such thing as a bad question. There can be questions with bad intent, and you have to be careful of that, right? But the question itself cannot be bad, right? There are always good questions also, as long as it's asked with good intent and trying to learn.
Exactly. So as you said, like very nice session actually. இன்னைக்கு கொஸ்டின்ஸும் அவ்வளோ அழகா இருந்தது, நீங்க அதுக்கு அவ்வளோ அழகா சொன்னீங்க. ரொம்ப ரொம்ப தேங்க்ஸ் அடியன் சுவாமி தன்யோஸ்மி. Lata mom
just put a hand up actually.
Yeah, I think Ramanujam Swami, I think he raised his hand.
Okay, yeah, come on. சொல்லுமா.
அடியன் சுவாமி, தன்யா கார் டிரைவ் பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கா. She has a question.
Okay.
So அதனால வீடியோல இல்ல. So then I want to ask the question.
Tell her I don't have a joke for her today.
Unfortunate. But so usually with like boys, samashanam pannardu poonal போடுறச்சேவே பண்றது, like that's part of that process. And அது வந்து 7 வயசு 9 வயசு 11 வயசு, like generally very young இருக்கச்சேவே பண்றது. Whereas if you're a girl and you want to samashanam பண்ணிக்கிறதுன்னா, you have to wait until you get married. So say இப்போலாம் like say 20 25 அப்போ வரைக்கும் வெயிட் பண்றது. and அதுக்கு முன்னாடி வந்து all of the things you can't do because சமாஷனம் பண்ணிக்கல, இது கிச்சன்ல போய் ஹெல்ப் பண்றது, anything something like that பண்ணக்கூடாது. what is stopping a girl from அவளோட பிறந்தாத்துல அவளோட அப்பாவோட ஆச்சாரியனோட போய் சமாஷனம் பண்ணிக்கிறது, not needing that to be dependent on யார் கல்யாணம் பண்ணிக்கிறது, எப்போ கல்யாணம் பண்ணிக்கிறது, and all of that?
Okay, excellent question. So let me separate, right? Samashanam is not tied to Upanayana, right? I know people tend to mix the two up, but you know the two are not connected, right? They're two different things altogether. In fact, if வைக்கான சொல்ல பார்த்தோன்னா அவ வந்து கர்ப்பத்திலேயே சமாஷனம் ஆயிடுதுன்னு சொல்றாங்க. For them, there's not even an event that happens after birth, right? Even before birth, they say they have samashanam done for them. So it's not necessarily tied, you know, to a particular event like, you know, a kalyanam or upanayanam and so on. Coming to the question of the girls versus boys, right? I may give an answer that could be controversial, but I'll give you my opinion on this. Right? I think the reason it happens like that is because and this is a cultural thing, right? The boys don't change their acharya, right? வந்து யார் ஆச்சாரியா பிறந்ததுலேருந்து it tends to be that is the acharya for them throughout their life, right? So if they do the samashanam to, you know, their family acharya when the age of, let's say, 5 or 10 or whatever, right? That doesn't change throughout their life, right? Whereas for the girls, what happens again culturally, right? What happens is you get married, and then let's say you do samashanam after that, you go and do the samashanam with your husband and whoever the husband's acharya is, right? And so you take that person as your acharya also for your family, right? So if you have a samashanam done prior, right, then what do you do, right, after you get married? If that person is, you know, you get married to a person who has not done samashanam, for example. So after 5 years after the wedding, that person goes to the samashanam. Now, are you supposed to go do a second samashanam with your husband? But then you already have done samashanam, you already have an acharya. So then what do you do, right? I think these are probably the cultural conflicts. And they said, okay, it's easier if you just wait, right? And do it after wedding, then you do it with your husband and do it with, you know, to the same acharya as your husband, and then your whole family, your husband, your children, you know, they can all follow that same acharya, right? So this could be a cultural thing. Now, what happens to a person who says, I can't wait that long, and they have a samashanam done? Tricky question, right? நம்ம சம்பிரதாயம் சொல்றோம் ஒரு தடவை சமாஷனம், right? Sharanagati can be done only one time. You know, you don't do it a second time, right? So do you do it a second time? I think I would leave it again, you know, to the acharyas, right? In some cases, I've seen people use some examples to say that's okay. You can do a second time, that's fine, nothing wrong with that. You're only remembering the first time, you're not surrendering fresh. This is just a remembrance of that first time, and because you want to, you know, connect to that husband and their acharya parampara, you're doing it, right? And therefore it's okay. Some people say, no, that's not okay, you should not do it a second time at all. It's okay, right? Your husband you can continue to have your, you know, acharya that you took before, but follow the sampradayam of the husband, right, and the family, because, you know, you don't want to confuse everybody else in the family by having two separate, you know, conflicting, you know, potentially conflicting situation in the house. So don't do the samashanam second time, but, you know, follow the husband, right? So I would leave it up to the family, their acharyas, talk to the elders and the acharyas and decide what is the right thing to do, right? But overall, right, I don't think we should, in my opinion, restrict saying, you know, girls should not do before wedding, right? I don't think that's the case, right? If the girl is mature enough and understands what, you know, samashanam is and wants to go through the process, right? My opinion is, who are we to stop that, right?
Thank you. The cultural context like make sense why it happened the way it happened.
Right.
But yeah, thank you.
அடியன் சுவாமி ரொம்ப நல்லா இருந்தது.
அடியன் சுவாமி
பெரியாழ்வார் திருமொழி மெச்சூர் சங்கபெற்றார் பதிகத்துக்கும் அவர் எம்பார் அந்த அத்தூதன் அப்பூச்சி காட்டுகின்றான்ங்கிறதுக்கு இது சங்கு சக்கரத்தை காட்டி இது பண்ணார் அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு ஒரு ஐதீகம் கேள்விப்பட்டதோ அப்படி இருக்கு.
கரெக்ட், உண்டு, அதுவும் உண்டு. அங்க அப்பூச்சி காட்டுகின்றான் அவர் பயமுறுத்துற மாதிரி காமிச்சார். அது இல்லைன்னு சொல்லி எம்பார் டெமான்ஸ்ட்ரேட் பண்ணார். அப்போ அதுல மோர் இன்ட்ரெஸ்டிங் வாஸ் தட் that not that எம்பார் டெமான்ஸ்ட்ரேட்டட் நிறைய picked up, but எம்பார் was in the back of the audience. Arayar picked it up and Ramanuja was sitting in the front. Immediately said எம்பார் இருக்காரான்னு கேட்டார். So அது in reverse side, interestingly, I don't know if it was எம்பார் or I don't know who it was, right? There was one time where after சாஸ்திரம் சொல்றது, for those who are interested, after eating you're supposed to walk 1,000 steps. ஒரு சாஸ்திர வச்சனம் இது. சாப்பிட்ட உடனே 1000 ஸ்டெப் நடக்கணும் அப்படின்னு ஒரு வச்சனம் இருக்கு. ஸோ அந்த காலத்தில் பெரிய வேலை என்ன பண்ணா, சாப்பிட்ட உடனே நாட் இமீடியட்லி பட் சாப்பிட்டு ஒரு லெட்ஸ் ஒரு half an hour கழிச்சு they'll go for a walk. ஸோ அந்த மாதிரி உடையவர் மடத்துக்குள்ளே நடப்பார் அப்படின்னு ஒரு ஐட்டியம். அது மாதிரி நடந்து போயிட்டு இருக்கும்போது சடன்லி he rapidly turned around and came back. அப்போ ஐ டோன்ட் நோ முதலியாண்டானா எம்பாரை யாரும் தெரியல. அப்போ அவர் கேட்டாரா, இந்த மடித்தேன் மனை வாழ்க்கைகள் பதிகம் மனசுல திருவுள்ளத்தில் ஓடுகிறதான்னு கேட்டார் அப்படின்னு. ஸோ இவளுக்குள்ள ஒரு நல்ல ஒரு அண்டர்ஸ்டாண்டிங் தெரியும். ஆச்சாரியா knows what the Sishyas running in Sishya's mind and the Sishya knows what's running in the Acharya's mind, even though it's only in their own minds. அந்த இடத்துல உடையவர் ஆமான்னு சொன்னாமா, மடித்தேன் மனை வாழ்க்கை நினைச்சேன். அந்த மடித்தேன் மனை வாழ்க்கை, அந்த மடித்தேங்கிறது மடிச்சு திரும்புறது இல்லையா, அந்த பாசல வந்த உடனே அப்படியே ரியல் லைஃப்ல மடிச்சு திரும்பிட்டார் அப்படின்னு.
ரொம்ப நாள் சொன்ன கொஞ்சம் எக்ஸ்பிளனேஷன்ஸ் எல்லாமே ஜென்ரலி குழந்தைகள் கல்வி கிடைச்சது உட்காந்தவன நம்ம சொல்ற நீங்க முதல்ல சொன்ன மாதிரி பெரியவாளா இருக்கும்பொழுது சில விஷயங்கள் கேட்கறதுக்கு இது கேட்கலாமா கூட அங்க யோசனைகள் இதெல்லாம் வந்துடுறது. குழந்தைகளுக்கு அன்ஃபில்டர்ட் கொஸ்டின்ஸ் ரொம்ப ரொம்ப அழகா இருந்தது. எக்ஸ்பிளனேஷன் ரொம்ப நல்லா இருந்தது. ரொம்ப
those questions are important, right? நான் சொன்ன முதல்ல இல்ல, see it as a dialogue, right? Don't look at the age of the person, look at the question and the value of the question, right? Because all these questions are applicable to everybody, right? None of us are like we can say, well, இது குழந்தைகளுக்கு எனக்கு எதுக்கு சம்மந்தம் இல்லை யாரும் சொல்ல முடியாது.
கண்டிப்பா
நம்முடைய நாலேஜ் லெவல் கொஞ்சம் மாறுபட்டு இருக்கணும் இல்லையா? அதனால certain things எல்லாம் முன்னாடி சொன்ன மாதிரி நம்ம ஈட்டுல இருந்து நான் சொல்றேன் அப்படின்னு எடுத்தோம்னா அது சில பேருக்கு புரியுமா புரியாது நம்ம யோசிக்கணும். But the concepts themselves don't change, right? And ultimately, if we look at it, we are all, நான் முன்னாடி சொன்ன மாதிரி தான் நம்ம இந்த ஒரு 50 வருஷம் டிஃபரன்ஸ் நம்ம பெரிய டிஃபரன்ஸ் நினைக்கிறோம். ஈவன் இந்த ஏஜ் ஆஃப் த எர்த் இட் செல்ஃப் இட்ஸ் நத்திங், ரைட்? அப்போ பெருமாள் முன்னாடி நம்ம எல்லாருமே குழந்தைகள் தானே. All of us will have the same questions. We are all at the same level in front of Perumal.
அடியன் சுவாமி ரொம்ப ரொம்ப அருமையா இருந்தது சுவாமி. இந்த மத்தியான பொழுது அவ்வளோ அழகா போச்சு. ஸோ நீங்க எம்பார்ல ஆரம்பிச்சு எம்பார்ல முடிச்சுட்டு அழகா அது அமைஞ்சிடுது. அந்த மாதிரி அடியனுக்கு ஒரே ஒரு சின்ன கொஸ்டின், உங்களுக்கு ரொம்ப ஜாஸ்தி டைம் ஆயிடுதான்னு எனக்கு தெரியல, கேட்டு ஒரு குழந்தைகளுக்கு இது சின்ன கிளாஸஸ் எல்லாம் எடுக்கும்போது ஒரு குழந்தை மோட்சம்னா என்ன அப்படின்னு கேட்டது. எனக்கு கரெக்டா எக்ஸ்பிளைன் பண்ண தெரியல. சோ அது அவளுக்கு புரியுற மாதிரி ஒரு 7-8 வயசு இருக்கும், அவ்வளவுதான் அந்த குழந்தைக்கு. சோ மோட்சம் அப்படின்னு சொல்லும்போது நான் பர்த் டெத் என்ன, ஹாப்பினஸ் என்ன, சேட்னஸ் என்ன, பட் அது அவள் அந்த குழந்தைகளோட லெவல்ல புரியுற மாதிரினா எப்படி அது எக்ஸ்பிளைன் பண்ண முடியும் ஈஸியா?
எக்ஸ்பிளேஷன் சொல்லணும்னா நமக்கு நம்முடைய பிலீஃப் சிஸ்டம் நடத்துக்கணும் இல்லையா? நமக்கு நம்ம we believe in cycles of life and death. ஸோ நமக்கு அது சம்சாரம் நம்ம சொல்றோம். சம்சார சைக்கிள்லேருந்து விடுபடுறது மோட்சம். That's a very universal answer for all philosophies within our பாரத வைதிக மதத்தில் சொல்லலாம், ரைட்? What that is, it changes from different philosophies, right? இப்போ சில பேர் இந்த ஆத்மானுபவமே மோட்சம் சொல்றாங்க, சில பேர் கைவல்யம் தான் மோட்சம் சொல்றாங்க. நம்ம பரவத பிராப்தி, பெருமாளுக்கு பண்ற கைங்கரியம் தான் மோட்சம் நம்ம சொல்றோம். இன்னும் சில பேர் அதுக்கும் தாண்டி இருக்குன்னு சொல்றாலும் இருக்கா, ரைட்? இதுக்கெல்லாம் தாண்டி ஒரு சக்தின்னு ஒண்ணு இருக்கு, அது எல்லாத்தையும் தாண்டினது அப்படின்னு சொல்றவா இருக்கா. இது லாட் ஆஃப் டிஃப்ரெண்ட் philosophies, right? But all of them agree on one thing, right? Moksham is being break out of the samsaric cycle of life and death and being born over and over again in not necessarily in this world itself, but in multiple worlds, whatever the planes of existence are. அதுலேருந்து விடுபடுறது மோட்சம் அப்படிங்கிறது எல்லாரும் ஒத்துக்கூடிய விஷயம். அது அந்த குழந்தைகளுக்கு வந்து அது என்னன்னு புரியலன்னா அப்புறம் நம்ம கொஞ்சம் வேற மாதிரி எக்ஸ்பிளைன் பண்ணணும். ரைட்? நம்ம சொல்லலாம் வந்து இப்போ இந்த உலகத்துல இந்த ஒரு லைஃப் மட்டும் வச்சுனா கூட we don't have endless joy, right? Or endless suffering, right? Neither of which can be tolerated by us. இந்த பாடியில் இருக்கும்போது எண்ட்லெஸ் சஃபரிங் டாலரேட் பண்ண முடியாது, எண்ட்லெஸ் ஜாயும் டாலரேட் பண்ண முடியாது. ரைட்? ஒரு ஃபிசிக்கலாகவே நம்ம பார்த்தோம்னா ரொம்ப சிரிச்சோன்னா ரொம்ப கழிச்சு வயிற்று வலி வந்துடும் சொல்லுவாங்க. நம்ம முடியல, என்னால் சிரிக்க முடியல இதுக்கு மேலே. ரைட்? ஸோ ஈவன் சிரிக்கிறதுங்கிறது ஒரு ஹாப்பினஸ் எக்ஸ்பிரஷன் இருந்தால் கூட அதுவே ஒரு லிமிட்டை தாண்ட முடியல நம்மளால். இல்லை ஒரு 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 திருக்கு நம்ம பண்ணி வச்சுக்கோம், 3 நாள் இருக்கு, இந்த மாதிரி சாப்பிட்டதே இல்லை லைஃப்ல எடுத்து சாப்பிட்டா கூட ஒரு 2 டம்ளர் மேலே அதுக்கப்புறம் திகட்டி போய்ட்டு சொல்லுவாங்க. ஸோ ஃபிசிக்கல் லெவல் இட்செல்ஃப் we see that we cannot handle it. Mentally also we see that ரொம்ப சந்தோஷமா இருந்தாலும் at a certain point தலைவலி வந்துடுது, அந்த மாதிரி ஆயிடுறது. சமீபத்தில் கூட ஒரு சர்ச்சைக்குரிய விஷயமா இருந்தது. இது இருந்தது இல்லை, இருக்கிறது இருக்க போறத விஷயம்தான். இந்த திருமாங்கல்ய தாரணங்கிறது நம்ம கல்யாணத்துல எப்ப ஏற்பட்டது? அது உண்மையிலே இருந்துதா, ஆதி காலத்துல இருந்ததா, பின்னாடி ஏற்பட்டதுன்னா அது யாராலுமே ஆன்சர் பண்ண முடியலங்கிறது தான் விஷயம். There is some evidence that it may have been there for a long time. There's also evidence that maybe it was a more recent concept, right? So one of the examples that ஆழ்வா பிரபந்தத்தில் எடுத்து பார்த்தோம்னா they say ஆண்டாளுடைய வாரணமாயத்துல திருமாங்கல் தானத்தை பத்தி பிரஸ்தாவம் இல்லைன்னு இருக்கு. ரைட்? பாக்கி எல்லாம் வருது, பாணி கிரகணம் எல்லாமே இருக்கு, சப்தபதி எல்லாமே இருக்கு, ஆனா இந்த இது மட்டும் இல்லை, திருமாங்கல் தானம் மட்டும் இல்லை. ஸோ அது என்ன பண்ணா ஒன் செட் ஆஃப் பீப்புள் டேக் தட் சே அப்போ திருமாங்கல்ய தானங்கிறது ஆண்டாள் டைம்ல இல்லைன்னு நமக்கு தெரிய வருது அப்படின்னு ஒரு சில பேர் சொல்றாங்க. பட் இது சில பேர் எப்படி சொல்றாங்கன்னா இல்லை இருக்கு, பட் திருமாங்கல்ய தானம் ஆயிடுத்துனால் அந்த அனுபவம் கம்ப்ளீட் ஆயிடுச்சுன்னு அர்த்தம். அப்போ அது வந்து அந்த ஒரு ஜாயை தாங்க முடியாது ஆண்டாளான்னு சொல்லிட்டு அது பெருமாள் ஷார்ட் பண்ணி விட்டார், அதை மட்டும் விட்டுட்டார், அதை மட்டும் நடக்காம தடுத்துட்டார், ஆனால் அது வரல, அவளால் தாங்கியிருக்க முடியாத அப்படின்னு. ஏன்னா அப்புறம் முழிச்சுட்டானா ஐயோ நடக்கலையேன்ற அந்த ஒரு போயிடும். இல்ல நடந்துடுத்துன்னு ஆனந்தம் வந்துடுத்துனால மேற்கொண்டு எதுவுமே பண்ணிருக்க மாட்டாவோ, மேற்கொண்டு பாசல்களும் வந்திருக்காரு. ஸோ அப்படி ஒரு எக்ஸ்பிளேஷன் இருக்கு, இப்படி ஒரு எக்ஸ்பிளேஷன் இருக்கு. ஸோ எதுக்கு சொல்ல வந்தேன்னா, இப்போ நம்ம இந்த எண்ட்லெஸ் ஜாய் நம்மளால தாங்க முடியாதுங்கிறதுக்கு அதான் யூஸ் பண்ற அந்த இடத்துல, அவளால் தாங்கியிருக்க முடியாது அந்த பூரணத்துல. ஸோ நமக்கு இந்த லைஃப்ல நம்மளால ஃபுல் ஜாயை தாங்க முடியாதுன்னா இதுதான் பிரேக். We want to get to a state where we can be in that eternal complete joy only and be able to handle it. அது மோட்சமா நினைச்சுக்கலாம். How you get that is again different. நம்ம அது பெருமாளுடைய கைங்கரியத்துல நமக்கு அந்த eternal joy சொல்றோம். சில பேர் ஆத்மா அனுபவத்துல அந்த eternal joy சொல்றோம். அது மாதிரி வேற ஒருத்தர் சொல்லிக்கிறாங்க. So if you don't want to talk about samsaric cycles of life and death and all that, you can say, hey, even in this one life you can see you cannot handle it. So getting to that state of eternal joy and endless joy is what we call moksha.
Okay, அடியன் ரொம்ப ரொம்ப அற்புதமா இருந்தது சுவாமி. அதான் ரொம்ப எல்லாமே எளிமையாவும் இருக்கு கேட்கறதுக்கு. நமக்கே ராமானுஜம் சுவாமி சொன்ன மாதிரி நமக்கே நிறைய கேள்விகள்லாம் மனசுக்குள்ள அப்பப்ப வரும். இந்த குழந்தைகள் அப்படியே அழகா அதை கேட்டதுனால எங்களுக்கும் ஒரு தெளிவு வந்தது. இன்னொரு இது நம்ம குழந்தைகள் மட்டும் இல்ல, இந்த நம்மளோட சம்பிரதாயத்துல புதுசா வந்தவாளோ இல்ல ஈவன் பெரியவாளுக்கும் கூட இந்த கொஸ்டின் அண்ட் ஆன்சர் செஷன் ரொம்ப யூஸ்ஃபுல்லாகவும் இருக்கும். அண்ட் அது மாதிரி ஒன்று வைக்கலாம் அப்படின்னு யோசிக்கிறேன். அடியன் உங்களுக்கு சுவாமிக்கு டைம் இருந்ததுன்னா எதானா ஒன்று நாட் கன்ஃபைன் ஜஸ்ட் டு த குழந்தைகள் அப்படின்னு எதானா ஒன்று பண்ணலாமா அப்படின்னு.
நீங்க சொன்ன மாதிரி it doesn't have to be one person. நான் I just want to make sure if it's a panel we can do it, not a problem, but as long as
ரொம்ப ரொம்ப deep-ஆ
one person answers the question, one person answers the question and then the other person maybe adds a little bit more but doesn't go on to a total tangent, because then it will become a
இல்ல அது இல்ல சுவாமி. இப்போ பேரண்ட்ஸ் கூட கேள்வி கேட்கறதுக்காக சொன்னேன் நான்.
Yeah, sure, yeah. I would say keep it at this level for this, especially if children are around, right? If you want to have for more, and I'm not saying I'm the right person for that. If you want to have with a session with a scholar and have more knowledgeable, deep dive questions, we can do that. But the audience has to be right, because you don't want to have people walk away saying எனக்கு இது ரொம்ப ஏதோ பேசிட்டு இருக்காங்க ஒன்றும் புரியல இருந்து விடக்கூடாது.
அடி ஓகே. தன்யோஸ்மி சுவாமி ரொம்ப நன்னா இருந்தது எங்களுக்கு, எங்க எல்லாருக்குமே ரொம்ப வந்ததுக்கு ரொம்ப அடியேன். ஸ்ரீமதி ராமானுஜன்
ஆழ்வார் எம்பெருமானார் ஜீய திருவிலேஷன் அடியேன் முதற் கவிதாசன்
அடியேன் தன்யோஸ்மி.